All right, let's go to the question of the Veterans Administration, its conduct of the healthcare system itself broadly, and allegations of either fraud or mismanagement or possibly criminal conduct. Senator Blumenthal, I want to start with you. You're former U.S. Attorney, former Attorney General in the state of Connecticut. You have said that the Justice Department must get involved. Why hasn't it? And are you, sir, outraged that the administration has yet to put Department of Justice investigators on this case?
I believe that the Department of Justice has to be involved. I've urged Secretary Shinseki privately and, in fact, publicly to request and involve the Department of Justice. We're talking now about evidence, credible and specific evidence of criminal wrongdoing across the country in more than 30 places. The Inspector General of the Veterans Administration has only 165 investigators. Plainly, more resources are needed. Only the Department of Justice and the FBI have the resources, the expertise, and the authority to do a prompt and effective criminal investigation of the secret waiting lists, potential destruction of documents, falsification of records, in effect, the cooking of books and covering up that may have occurred. These are allegations, but there's evidence to support them. We're not rushing to judgment, but the Department of Justice can convene a grand jury if necessary. The IG cannot, and reflects and presents an outside independent authority that can offer accountability and the perception of accountability to restore trust and confidence on the part of veterans. And that has to be our focus. Accountability is a means to the end of assuring better health care, better delivery of health care, the end to delays and rigid bureaucracy and calcification of rules that have impeded access and blocked many veterans from receiving timely care.
Senator Thune, your thoughts about the President's press conference earlier this week. And also, I'd like to get your thoughts on a dust-up started by one of your Republican colleagues, Richard Burr, who criticized some of the veteran service organizations for not being forceful enough in calling for Eric Shinseki, the VA Secretary, to resign. Those organizations have accused him of lowball politics, outrageous conduct over this Memorial Day weekend. I'd like your thoughts on both subjects, sir.
Well, first off, I think the President just waited way too long to get into this, Major. That was the issue that many of us were raising, is that you had reports of up to 40 people who died on waiting lists. You had these reports of secret lists and falsifying records and all those sorts of things. And it took 3 weeks for the President to act. I'm glad that he's engaging. The things that were said yesterday about giving veterans access to non-VA facilities, to if they can't get into VA facilities, I think is a welcome change. And I think what Senator Burr's letter and the VFW's response to it suggests is there's a high level of frustration with what's going on, which I think gets at the broader issue of what do we do to reform the institutions. We've got a failure, basic failure of the institutions that hasn't been associated with funding, because we know that funding has been increased by 60% over the past 5 years to the VA. We need a top-to-bottom review by the Inspector General, system-wide, that points out and gives us an idea about how to proceed. And I think one of the things is we've got to have more accountability, more transparency about not only waiting lists, but outcomes at the VA. We also have to come up with a better model of delivering care to our veterans so they don't have these waits. I mean, this is a real tragedy. These are the people with whom we have a sacred trust, and that's been betrayed, and we need to make sure that it's fixed.
Senator Thune, the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, called Senator Burr's comments a monumental cheap shot. There are those who have expressed some nervousness about all this becoming hyper-politicized in a midterm election year. Is that what's going on?
Well, I don't know. There are going to be basic disagreements. There are different veteran service organizations came to different conclusions about whether or not Secretary Shinseki ought to step aside. But basically, what this ought to transcend politics, Major. This really is an issue that needs to be solved. And we're talking about the men and women who put their lives on the line, who risk everything for us. And we need to have a system of health care that gives them the highest possible quality care in a timely way, and do it in the most cost-effective way. And that ought to be what we're focused on. And I think right now you're just seeing a high level of frustration, and the only way that we're going to get to the bottom of this is to have that, I think, full-blown investigation and then look at better ways of delivering health care services to America's veterans.
Well, real quickly, about 15 seconds, Senator Blumenthal, have you called the Attorney General Eric Holder about this, and what's his response been about putting the DOJ on the case?
I've spoken to the director of the FBI about it, and obviously they are considering what the options are, learning more about it. But here's the really important point. Looming right away are more than 1 million Americans who are going to be leaving the military and becoming veterans, placing unforeseen demands on this system. It's a system under stress. There need to be reforms and accountability, and we owe our veterans better. I'm impatient and fed up, and so are the veterans.
Very good. Senator Richard Blumenthal, Senator John Thune, thank you very much. And we'll be back
Thanks, Major.
in 1 minute.